All right, hello. Just posting to X in Blue Sky. How's everyone doing? Going to be reading a couple books, select reading today. All right, so posting on X and Blue Sky. I've already posted on Instagram that I'm going live. What's up, y'all? How we doing? Not using my let's minimize this. So, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm going to be reading a couple of select chapters from Sandinistas Speak, speeches, writings, and interviews with leaders of Nicaragua's revolution. I have to say Nicaragua, like John Connor did in Terminator 2. It just sounds good. Rolls off the tongue really good. And I'm going to be reading a couple games from 50 Key Video Games. I think I read about 3 games. We're going to continue into the early 80s and mid 1980s. So I'm doing games in chronological order there. So, but all right. So I'm going to start off with Sandinistas Speak. This is about imperialism in Nicaragua. I read the introduction chapter last stream, and what did we learn, guys? The United States has invaded Nicaragua, I think, 11 times. And they are constantly trying to oppress them. They installed the Somoza Anastasio. The last name is Somoza, but the whole family's been running Nicaragua for 50 years. A dictatorship, brutal, right wing, horrible people. They own the media. They own most of the land, the meat packing plants, and literacy rates were down. The working class were very poor. So this book is about, a group of fellas. Here's pictures of them. This is the chapter we're going to read. There we go. Sandino was the first guy to really fight back in the late 20s, I believe, early 30s. But these are like testimonies and interviews with the Sandinistas who fought back and overthrew the Somozan dictatorship in 1979. So the introduction chapter had a ton of cool information, statistics. But the next chapter we're going to read about is the historic program of the FSLN. And I think I read a little bit ahead, so there's definitely some good statistics they talk about. And it's really cool because it basically breaks down like their constitution and what what their vision of the country is. So it's really cool to hear a group of people's just to see what they think, how their constitution is going to shape up. And let's start with page 13, the historic program of the FSLN. This document was first presented to the Nicaraguan people in 1969. It was reprinted by the FSLN Department of Propaganda and Political Education in June 1981. This translation from that edition is by Will Reisner. That's the little introduction there. Here we go. The Sandinista National Liberation Front, FSLN, arose out of the Nicaraguan people's need to have a vanguard organization capable of taking political power through direct struggle against its enemies and establishing a social system, that wipes out the exploitation and poverty that our people have been subjected to in past history. The FSLN is a politico-military organization whose strategic objective is to take political power by destroying the military and bureaucratic apparatus of the dictatorship and to establish a revolutionary government based on the worker-peasant alliance and the convergence of all the patriotic, anti-imperialist, and anti-oligarch forces in the country. The people of Nicaragua suffer under subjugation to a reactionary and fascist clique imposed by Yankee imperialism in 1932. The year Anastasio Somoza Garcia was named commander-in-chief of the so-called National Guard, GN. The Somoza's clique has reduced Nicaragua to the status of a neo-colony exploited by the Yankee monopolies and the country's oligarch groups. The present regime is politically unpopular and jurisdictionally illegal. The recognition and aid it gets from the North Americans is irrefutable proof of foreign interference in the affairs of Nicaragua. The FSLN has seriously and with great responsibility analyzed the national reality and has resolved to confront the dictatorship with arms in hand. We have concluded that the triumph of the Sandinista People's Revolution and the overthrow of the regime that is an enemy of the people will take place through the development of a hard-fought and prolonged people's war. Sorry, I was about to yawn. Whatever maneuvers and resources Yankee imperialism deploys, the Somoza's dictatorship is condemned to total failure in the face of the rapid advance and development of the People's Forces, headed by the Sandinista Liberation Front. Given this historic conjuncture, the FSLN has worked out this political program with an eye to strengthening and developing our organization, inspiring and stimulating the people of Nicaragua to march forward with the resolve to fight until the dictatorship is overthrown and to resist the intervention of Yankee imperialism in order to forge a free, prosperous, and revolutionary homeland. All right. Just real quick. Cat cam. Real quick cat cam. Got Cookie Marge on the bed. Anyways, all right. Continue. So, check it out. So, this might sound a little tedious, but the next few pages, it's going to break down their entire Constitution. Excuse me. So, let's go with bullet point number 1. A revolutionary government. The Sandinista People's Revolution will establish a revolutionary government that will eliminate the reactionary structure that arose from rigged elections and military coups. And the people's power will create a Nicaragua that is free of exploitation, oppression, backwardness, a free, progressive, and independent country. The revolutionary government will apply the following measures of a political character. A. It will endow revolutionary power with a structure that allows the full participation of the entire people on the national level as well as the local level, departmental, municipal, neighborhood. Excuse me. B. It will guarantee that all citizens can fully exercise all individual freedoms, and it will respect human rights. C. It will guarantee the free exchange of ideas, which above all leads to vigorously broadening the people's rights and national rights. D. It will guarantee freedom for the worker union movement to organize in the city and countryside, and freedom to organize peasant, youth, student, women's, cultural, sporting, and similar groups. E. It will guarantee the right of immigrant and exiled Nicaraguans to return to their native soil. F. It will guarantee the right to asylum for citizens of other countries who are persecuted for participation in the revolutionary struggle. G. It will severely punish the gangsters who are guilty of persecuting, informing on, abusing, torturing, or murdering revolutionaries and the people. H. Those individuals who occupy high political posts as a result of rigged elections and military coups will be stripped of their political rights. Oh my God. This always happens to me. I start yawning. All right. Next. The The revolutionary government will apply the following measures of an economic character. A. It will expropriate the landed estates, factories, companies, buildings, means of transportation, and other wealth usurped by the Somoza family and accumulated through the misappropriation and plunder of the nation's wealth. It will expropriate the landed estates, factories, companies, means of transportation, and other wealth usurped by the politicians and military officers and all other accomplices who have taken advantage of the present regime's administrative corruption. C. It will nationalize the wealth of all the foreign companies that exploit the mineral, forest, maritime, and other kinds of resources. D. It will establish workers' control over the administrative management of the factories and other wealth that are expropriated and nationalized. E. It will centralize the mass transit service. F. It will nationalize the banking system, which will be placed at the exclusive service of the country's economic development. G. It will establish an independent currency. H. It will refuse to honor the loans imposed on the country by the Yankee monopolies or those of any other power. I. It will establish commercial relations with all countries, whatever their system, to benefit the country's economic development. J. It will establish a suitable taxation policy, which will be applied with strict justice. K. It will prohibit usury, USURY. This prohibition will apply to Nicaraguan nationals as well as foreigners. I need to look that up. I don't know what that means. L. It will protect the small and medium-sized owners, producers, merchants, while restricting the excesses that lead to the exploitation of the workers. M. It will establish state control over foreign trade with an eye to diversifying it and making it independent. N. It will rigorously restrict the importation of luxury items. O. It will plan the national economy, putting an end to the anarchy characteristic of the capitalist system of production. An important part of this planning will focus on the industrialization and electrification of the country. That was pretty cool. So I find that pretty fascinating, guys, just learning about how they want to run their country, just getting a different view, because, I mean, I lived in America. I don't even know my own constitution, but it's cool hearing about them. All right, so bullet point number 2, it says, the Agrarian Revolution. The Sandinista People's Revolution will work out an agrarian policy that achieves an authentic agrarian reform, a reform that will, in the immediate term, carry out massive distribution of the land, eliminating the land grabs by the large landlords in favor of the workers, small producers, who labor on the land. I had a double shot espresso for this. I always get sleeping. Okay, A. It will expropriate and eliminate the capitalist and feudal estates. B. It will turn over the land to the peasants free of charge in accordance with the principle that the land should belong to those who work it. C. It will carry out a development plan for livestock raising aimed at diversifying and increasing the productivity of that sector. D. It will guarantee the peasants the following rights. 1. Timely and adequate agricultural credit. 2. Marketability, which means a guaranteed market for their production. And number 3, technical assistance. Now we go to E. It will protect the patriotic landowners who collaborate with the guerrilla struggle by paying them for their land holdings that exceed the limit established by the revolutionary government. It will stimulate and encourage the peasants to organize themselves in cooperatives so they can take their destiny into their own hands and directly participate in the development of the country. G. It will abolish the debts the peasantry incur to the landlord and any type of usurer. Usurer? There's that word again. H. It will eliminate the forced idleness that exists for most of the year in the countryside, and it will be attentive to creating sources of jobs for the peasant population. Now, number 3. Bullet point number 3 says, revolution in culture and education. The Sandinista People's Revolution will establish the basis for the development of the national culture, the people's education, and university reform. A. It will push forward a massive campaign to immediately wipe out illiteracy. B. It will develop the national culture and will root out the neo-colonial penetration in our culture. C. It will rescue the progressive intellectuals and their works that have arisen throughout our history from the neglect in which they have been maintained by the anti-people's regimes. D. It will give attention to the development and progress of education at the various levels: primary, intermediate, technical, university, etc. And education will be free at all levels and obligatory at some. E. It will grant scholarships at various levels of education to students who have limited economic resources. The scholarships will include housing, food, clothing, books, and transportation. It will train more and better teachers who have the scientific knowledge that the present era requires to satisfy the needs of our entire student population. G. It will nationalize the centers of private education that have been immorally turned into industries by merchants who hypocritically invoke religious principles. H. It will adapt the teaching programs to the needs of the country. It will apply teaching methods to the scientific and research needs of the country. I. It will carry out a university reform that will include, among other things, the following measures. 1. It will rescue the university from the domination of the exploiting classes so it can serve the real creators and shapers of our culture, the people. University instruction must be oriented around man, around the people. The university must stop being a breeding ground for bureaucratic egotists. Number 2. Eliminate the discrimination in access to university classes suffered by youth from the working class and peasantry. 3. Increase the state budget for the university so there are the economic resources to solve the various problems confronting it. Number 4. Majority student representation on the boards of the faculties, keeping in mind that the student body is the main segment of the university population. 5. Eliminate the neo-colonial penetration of the university, especially the penetration by the North American monopolies through the charity donations of the pseudo-philanthropic foundations. Number 6. Promotion of free experimental scientific investigation that must contribute to dealing with national and universal questions. 7. Strengthen the unity of the students, faculty, and investigators with the whole people by perpetuating the selfless example of the students and intellectuals who have offered their lives for the sake of the patriotic ideal. All right, bullet point number 4. Labor, legislation, and Social Security. The Sandinista People's Revolution will eliminate the injustices of the living and working conditions suffered by the working class under the brutal exploitation and will institute labor legislation and social assistance. A. It will enact a labor code that will regulate, among other things, the following rights. Number 1. It will adopt the principle that, quote, those who don't work don't eat, end quote. Of course, making exceptions for those who are unable to participate in the process of production due to age, children and old people, medical condition, or other reasons beyond their control. Strict enforcement of the 8-hour workday, that's number 2. Number 3, the income of the workers, wages and other benefits, must be sufficient to satisfy their daily needs. Number 4, respect for the dignity of the worker, prohibiting and punishing unjust treatment of workers in the course of their labor. Number 5, abolition of unjustified firings. 6, obligation to pay wages in the period required by law. 7, right of all workers to periodic vacations. That's cool. Now we're on B. It will eliminate the scourge of unemployment. C, it will extend the scope of the Social Security system to all the workers and public employees in the country. The scope will include coverage for illness, physical incapacity, and retirement. D, it will provide free medical assistance to the entire population. It will set up clinics and hospitals throughout the national territory. E, it will undertake massive campaigns to eradicate endemic illnesses and prevent epidemics. F, it will carry out urban reform which will provide each family with adequate shelter. It will put an end to profiteering speculation in urban land, which subdivisions, urban construction, and rental housing, that exploits the need that working families in the cities have for an adequate roof over their heads in order to live. G. It will initiate and expand the construction of adequate housing for the peasant population. H. It will reduce the charges for water, light, sewers, urban beautification. It will apply programs to extend all these services to the entire urban and rural population. I. It will encourage participation in all sports types and categories. And J. It will eliminate the humiliation of begging by putting the above-mentioned measures into practice. That's really neat. So, bullet point 5. Administrative honesty. The Sandinista People's Revolution will root out administrative governmental corruption and will establish strict administrative honesty. A. It will abolish the criminal vice industry, prostitution, gambling, drug use, etc., which the privileged sector of the National Guard and the foreign parasites exploit. B. It will establish strict control over the collection of taxes to prevent government functionaries from profiting, putting an end to the normal practice of the present regime's official agencies. C. It will end the arbitrary actions of the members of the GN who plunder the population through the subterfuge of local taxes. D. It will put an end to the situation wherein military commanders appropriate the budget that is supposed to go to take care of common prisoners, and it will establish centers designed to rehabilitate these wrongdoers. E. It will abolish the smuggling that is practiced on a large scale by the gang of politicians, officers, and foreigners who are the regime's accomplices. F. It will severely punish persons who engage in crimes against administrative honesty, embezzlement, smuggling, trafficking in vices, etc., using great severity when it involves elements active in the revolutionary movement. Now, on to number 6. Reincorporation of the Atlantic coast. The Sandinista People's Revolution will be put into practice a special plan for the Atlantic coast, which has been abandoned to total neglect in order to incorporate this area into the nation's life. It will end the unjust exploitation the Atlantic coast has suffered throughout history by the foreign monopolies, especially Yankee imperialism. B. It will prepare suitable lands in the zone for the development of agriculture and ranching. C. It will establish conditions that encourage the development of the fishing and forest industries. D. It will encourage the flourishing of this region's local cultural values, which flow from the specific aspects of its historic tradition. E. It will wipe out the odious discrimination to which the indigenous Miskitos, Sumos, Zambos, and blacks of this region are subjected. All right, bullet point number 7. Emancipation of women. The Sandinista People's Revolution will abolish the odious discrimination that women have been subjected to compared to men. It will establish economic, political, and cultural equality between women and men. A. It will pay special attention to the mother and child. B. It will eliminate prostitution and other social vices, through which the dignity of women will be raised. C. It will put an end to the system of servitude that women suffer, which is reflected in the tragedy of the abandoned working mother. D. It will establish for children born out of wedlock the right to equal protection by the revolutionary institutions. E. It will establish daycare centers for the care and attention of the children of working women. F. It will establish a 2-month maternity leave before and after birth for women who work. G. It will raise women's political, cultural, and vocational levels through their participation in the revolutionary process. Bullet point number 8. Respect for religious beliefs. The Sandinista People's Revolution will guarantee the population of believers the freedom to profess any religion. A. It will respect the right of citizens to profess and practice any religious belief. B. It will support the work of priests and other religious figures who defend the working people. Bullet point number 9. Independent foreign policy. The Sandinista People's Revolution will eliminate the foreign policy of submission to Yankee imperialism. It will establish a patriotic foreign policy of absolute national independence and one that is for authentic universal peace. It will put It will put an end to the Yankee interference in the internal problems of Nicaragua. It will practice a policy of mutual respect with other countries and fraternal collaboration between peoples. B. It will expel the Yankee military mission, the so-called Peace Corps spies in the guise of technicians, and military and similar political elements who constitute a barefaced intervention in the country. C. It will accept economic and technical aid from any country, but always and only when this does not involve political compromises. D. Together with other peoples of the world, it will promote a campaign in favor of authentic universal peace. E. It will abrogate all treaties signed with any foreign power that damage national sovereignty. Bullet point number 10. Central American People's Unity. The Sandinista People's Revolution is for the true union of the Central American peoples in a single country. A. It will support authentic unity with the fraternal peoples of Central America. This unity will lead the way to coordinating the efforts to achieve national liberation and establish a new system without imperialist domination or national betrayal. Oh my God. B. It will eliminate the so-called integration, whose aim is to increase Central America's submission to the North American monopolies and the local reactionary forces. All right. Bullet point 11. Sorry, my forearm hurts like right here. Ow. Bullet point 11. Solidarity among peoples. The Sandinista People's Revolution will put an end to the use of the national territory as a base for Yankee aggression against other fraternal peoples and will put into practice militant solidarity with fraternal peoples fighting for their liberation. A. It will actively support the struggle of the peoples of Asia, Africa, and Latin America against the new and old colonialism and against the common enemy, Yankee imperialism. B. It will support the struggle of the black people and all the people of the United States for an authentic democracy and equal rights. C. It will support the struggle of all peoples against the establishment of Yankee military bases in foreign countries. Bullet point 12. People's Patriotic Army. The Sandinista People's Revolution will abolish the armed force called the National Guard, which is an enemy of the people. It will create a patriotic, revolutionary, and people's army. It will abolish the National Guard. Okay, this is A. It will abolish the National Guard, a force that is an enemy of the people, created by the North American occupation forces in 1927 to pursue, torture, and murder the Sandinista patriots. B. In the new People's Army, professional soldiers who are members of the old army will be able to play a role providing they have observed the following conduct. Number 1, they have supported the guerrilla struggle. Number 2, they have not participated in murder, plunder, torture, and persecution of the people and the revolutionary activists. 3, they have rebelled against the despotic and dynastic regime of the Somozas. Now we're on C. It will strengthen the new People's Army, raising its fighting ability and its tactical and technical level. D. It will inculcate in the consciousness of the members of the People's Army the principle of basing themselves on their own forces in the fulfillment of their duties in the development of all their creative activity. It will deepen the revolutionary ideals of the members of the People's Army with an eye toward strengthening their patriotic spirit and their firm conviction to fight until victory is achieved, overcoming obstacles and correcting errors. It will forge a conscious discipline in the ranks of the People's Army and will encourage the close ties that must exist between the combatants and the people. G. It will establish obligatory military service and will arm the students, workers, and farmers who, organized in people's militias, will defend their rights won against the inevitable attack by the reactionary forces of the country and Yankee imperialism. The final bullet point, 13. Veneration of our martyrs. The Sandinista People's Revolution will maintain eternal gratitude to and in veneration of our homeland's martyrs, and will continue the shining example of heroism and selflessness that they have bequeathed to us. A. It will educate the new generations in eternal gratitude and veneration toward those who have fallen in the struggle to make Nicaragua a free homeland. B. It will establish a secondary school to educate the children of our people's martyrs. C. It will inculcate in the entire people the imperishable example of our martyrs, defending the revolutionary idea. Ever onward to victory! Exclamation point. All right. So, oh man, my stream ended on TikTok. Why did my stream ended? That sucks, man. Damn, y'all. Why is this? Well, I'm still live on X right now. But it stopped streaming on TikTok. What the fuck? Lame. Alright, well, that was that chapter, guys. So that was pretty cool, man. Just to see, that Constitution seems pretty fair, huh? They want, a strict 8-hour workday. They want hospitals. They want free healthcare, free education. I thought that was a really good insight to what the Sandinistas want for their country. So, Marco Rubio or, any war hawk politician in the United States see these guys as terrorists, they don't sound like terrorists to me, guys, So, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. The next chapter is called Nicaragua 0 Hour by Carlos Fonseca Amador. He was a central leader of the FSLN. So we're going to put that on hold for next time. Let me see how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Damn, this is a long chapter, guys. That's a very long chapter. Yeah, that's like 20 pages long. I'm going to have to get my throat ready for that one. All right. So the second chapter of Sandinista Speak. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And those are the kind of books, man, that just really turn that light bulb on my head. It really gets me learning about imperialism and what our country is up to. And in the introduction of that book, man, the Somoza dictatorship backed by the United States and the West just completely made that country destitute, and they were making the country extremely poor so they can work 5 times as hard to make profits for the people upstairs. So very disgusting, but imperialism does. So free Nicaragua, man. All right, so let me try to see if I can well, if I'm not streaming on TikTok anymore, that's fine. I think I'm still going on X and YouTube, right? Let me just verify I'm multi-streaming still. Yeah, I'm still live. I think I'm still live on YouTube. Anyways, all right, just checking, y'all. Just checking. All right, so let's continue. 50 Key Video Games, guys. It's the second book I'm reading today. And last stream with this book, we read 3 different games. I think we talked about the Oregon Trail a little bit. We talked Pong, Space Invaders, and Pac-Man. But we're going in chronological order, guys. Let's do Donkey Kong next. I don't know what the heck Zork is. We're going to skip Zork because I want to talk about that. So Donkey Kong is page 63. Let's talk about a little bit of history of the original Donkey Kong arcade game. And I'm only going to read select. There's like 4 to 5 bullet points, in the paragraph. So, narrative and character in Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong's music, and Donkey Kong Beyond the Arcade. So, I want you guys to check this book out. So, I'm not going to spoil it all for you. I'm just going to read select readings, but let's start at the beginning. Donkey Kong, 1981, page 63. As the creation myth goes, in the beginning, Shigeru Miyamoto wanted to name his first ever game a challenging 4-level visual and aural extravaganza with unprecedented attention to character and story for an arcade game, Stubborn Gorilla. As frequently happens with creation myths, there are various tellings of the story. In many, the Japanese English dictionary Miyamoto consulted offered up Donkey and Kong as synonyms, and thus began the legend of one of the video game's most iconic characters when the coin-operated arcade game with that cryptic title, Donkey Kong, Nintendo 1981, was released. Nintendo initially planned to make its way into U.S. arcades with a top-down shooter, following in the genre of earlier successes like Space Invaders and Galaxian, called Radar Scope. While Radar Scope was successful in Japan, the early test markets in the U.S. were decidedly underwhelming. Nintendo gambled on an unknown designer, Miyamoto, and a literally game-changing plan to repurpose the underperforming Radar Scope machines into something previously unseen in the video game world. Donkey Kong established not only Nintendo, but also its creator, as major forces within the video game industry. The game introduced several important innovations in game design. It was the first highly successful example of the platform genre, where characters moved an avatar through a computer-animated space while avoiding obstacles, as opposed to firing at descending invaders, like in Space Invaders, or navigating through a maze, as in Pac-Man. The shift in the game's basic action for the player was distinctive, as it introduced the potent activity of rescuing together with what had previously been limited to verbs like shooting and chasing. The player's avatar, initially a carpenter named Jumpman, had no extraordinary abilities, just the capacity to run, jump, and occasionally grab a hammer. Jumpman would get a career and name change, becoming the plumber Mario in the later games. Yet Donkey Kong also stands apart from its fellow quarter-gulping games for offering up more narrative information than was revealed in other arcade video games and for the relative complexity of its musical accompaniment. Let's read one more bullet point because this is pretty interesting. The next subchapter of this is narrative and character in Donkey Kong. The effects at storytelling within Donkey Kong were unprecedented within arcade video games up to its time. In his analysis of Centipede, Richard Rouse III had astutely observed that most early arcade games avoided a story, but instead focused just on establishing a setting. Neither the game nor its paratextual elements, like cabinet illustrations, explain why there were insects dropping down from the top of the screen, nor why the player should try to shoot those insects. And similarly, mysterious settings could be described in Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Frogger, and many others. Donkey Kong uses introductory and inter-level animated sequences, early examples of what would be later be called cinematics or cutscenes, following the inter-level animated shows in Pac-Man, which did not explain anything about the story and only highlighted the playfulness of its characters. to reveal the story where the giant ape, in parentheses, in Miyamoto's imagination, the ape had been owned by Jumpman, has abducted a woman, who is Jumpman's girlfriend, climbed up a ladder, and then jumps with such force that it causes the girders to bend. Jumpman must then run, jump, and climb up the girders to try and rescue the woman. That the woman in the game would eventually be known as Pauline is explained as a homage to the wife of the warehouse manager Polly, who was assisting in the conversion of unsold radar scope machines and Donkey Kong cabinets. That's cool. Intentionally or not, the name Pauline creates a connection to the early 20th century film series, The Perils of Pauline. Ben Singer has written about The Perils of Pauline as the lone surviving vestige of a genre that he labels the serial queen melodrama. These films stressed female independence and mastery, and pointed to the youthful film industry's interest in cultivating a female audience. Indeed, there are important parallels between the early film industry and early video game industry's efforts to create more products with female protagonists, as occurred in 1982 with Miss Pac-Man, a game that, like Donkey Kong, also borrows the visual and musical vocabularies of early cinema. The Pauline of the early film serials was a bold adventurer, making the hapless Pauline of Donkey Kong, whose sole purpose in the game is to cry help. A politically reactionary reconfiguring of what had earlier been a far more active and heroic female character. If we can conceive of Donkey Kong as a nostalgic and even perhaps postmodern reworking of early cinema conventions, it is also relevant to note that the narrative device of the cliffhanger, such a central feature of early serial cinema, finds a modern parallel in the way that games like Donkey Kong lead the player through a level only to discover that the damsel is still in distress and will need saving in the next level. Donkey Kong's postmodern pastiche extends beyond allusions to early cinema and into a landmark early example of Hollywood's adventure and fantasy films. RKO Pictures' King Kong from 1933. One of the most iconic moments from this influential film has Kong, a giant ape, kidnapping a blonde white woman and scaling the heights of the recently completed Empire State Building. Donkey Kong also features a giant ape stealing away with the white woman to the top of a high building, as well as seeming to share the family name from RKO's earlier film. When Donkey Kong began generating massive revenue for Nintendo, Universal Studios lodged an infringement suit against them, citing similarities in the likeness and name of its title characters. Histories of the Nintendo company and Donkey Kong often relay, with no dearth of glee, the poetic irony of Nintendo's lawyer pointing to a 1975 suit of Universal's against RKO, where Universal had successfully argued that King Kong was in the public domain, hence negating their own claims of ownership. RKO's original 1933 film was remade in 1976 by John Guillermin, and perhaps some of the Chinese company Nintendo's fascination with the U.S. figure of King Kong may make sense within the context of a moment when Stuart Hall said that postmodernism, quote, is about how the world dreams itself to be American. So there's Donkey Kong, guys. There's a couple more bullet points, but I'm going to skip them. Don't want to spoil it all for you. Plus reading takes a lot out of me. All right, so up next in chronological order, I'm going to skip Dragon's Lair. I'm going to skip Elite. I'm going to skip King's Quest. Let's go do Tetris. And then after that, let's do Super Mario Brothers. These are going to be good. Let's read some popular ones. So Tetris is on page 148. No, that's King's Quest 268. All right, bear with me, guys. Let's get over there. Let's read about Tetris. All right, here we go. Oh, I just want to check one thing real quick, dude. All right, here we go. Tetris. There are several key scenes in The Queen's Gambit from 2020 on Netflix where chess prodigy Elizabeth Harmon, played by Anna Taylor-Joy, imagines statuesque pawns, bishops, and knights sweeping across the ceiling, analyzing countless possibilities for games in her head. Harmon is depicted as obsessively fascinated with the elegant movement of the pieces, practicing, refining, and committing strategies to memory. While viewers may not have had this kind of connection to the game of chess, many of them are likely to recall a similar experience with the video game Tetris. Imagining the tetriminos endlessly rotating in midair and falling gently into neat rows behind one's eyelids, after images of hours of compelling play set to the game's captivating musical loops. Tetris is ubiquitous and influential, a household name known to gamers and non-gamers alike. The popularity of this falling block puzzle has been consistently credited to the addictive qualities of its satisfying, challenging, yet irreducibly simple gameplay. The game has sold over 500 million copies according to the official Tetris website and earned a Guinness World Record for the most ported video game in October 2010, with versions on 65 platforms. However, it was not Alexei Pajitinov's 1984 prototype that catapulted Tetris to the unassailable place in the gaming pantheon, but the versions accompanied by Russian-tinged graphics and music that were commercially released for the NES and the Game Boy in 1989, which allowed a wide range of players to access and experience a sleek, polished version of the original idea. The top 47,858 games of all time podcast, for instance, unequivocally ranked the 1989 Game Boy release as the greatest game of all time. While this argument complicates the notion of the game as a single entity in a volume such as this, Tetris remains remarkably stable in its core game design across various iterations. I would argue that the game owes its continuing cultural resonance and relevance not only to this constancy and sense of timelessness, but also to its added music and graphics, which imparted a distinctive personality to the game and transformed it into a lasting icon. In this brief chapter, I describe not only the ludic merits of Tetris, but also how the music transformed the puzzle game and solidified its status as a transcendent pop cultural icon before situating the game within academic discourse. Alexei Pajitnov developed Tetris on an Electronica 60 terminal in June 1984 while working for the Soviet Academy of Sciences, programming in Pascal in his spare time. The original version had black and white graphics, with the pieces represented by square brackets instead of patterned squares and colors of later iterations, and no sound. However, as Tetris made its way to the United States, it acquired distinctively Soviet graphics and music that exoticized the game for U.S. audiences and added a purported glimpse behind the Iron Curtain. The 1988 release by Spectrum Holobyte was the first to introduce the Russian aesthetic to entice North American players to play the Soviet Challenge. Cool. All right, so let's see. The next bullet point is called From Folk Tune to Fandom. The next one is Perfection in Motion, the gameplay. Let's read this bullet point. Perfection in Motion, the gameplay. The music of Tetris complements gameplay that can be best described as perfection in motion. Matthew Matosis, 2013. The set of 7 different tetromino pieces represents a Goldilocks-esque just right with regard to gameplay complexity, styled in Tetris games as tetraminos to better match the game's title and allow for a trademark on the term. Triominos only have 2 permutations, which lack challenge for the player, whereas the 12 permutations of pentomino shapes would be too complicated to manage well. Further, the gameplay has a universal appeal that does not require mediation from language, narrative, or culture, which also makes it easier for new players to understand quickly. And every player will be challenged by the game at some point as it progresses. Other pieces have used similar descriptions, such as airtight, bulletproof, and impenetrable, to espouse the intuitive perfection of the gameplay and its difficulty curve. Jordan explored the game's mechanics in detail, examining elements such as the algorithms that pseudo-randomly select tetriminos for the player to create a finely tuned difficulty curve, and the introduction of color, sound, and visual interface designed to enhance gameplay cognition. Additionally, part of the game's appeal lies in its constructive impulse, creating lines and tidying up the game space instead of going on a destructive rampage. Stafford frames Tetris in light of the Zeigarnik effect, a phenomenon in which human beings have a better memory of tasks that they have not yet completed or that they were interrupted. Tetris is endlessly incomplete and thus intensely and psychologically absorbing, addictive, and memorable. The next bullet point is Beyond the Game. Kind of gives some history on its selling, but we'll skip that one for now. So that was Tetris, guys. We're going to go to Super Mario Bros, guys. Come on. I'm excited to talk about Super Mario Bros. This is on page 262. Let's go to page 262. All right, let's get some water. Excuse me. All right, let's read Super Mario Bros. From 1985. I'm sure there'll be a lot of good factoids in here. Nintendo's Super Mario Bros. Wasn't the first video game starring Mario, but it is one of the most notable. When it was released in 1985, the console market in North America had collapsed, and many thought video games were just a fad. Excuse me. Sorry. By 1987, the North American console market had rebounded, and Nintendo was in control of 70% of that market. The games released for its console were one of the main reasons why Nintendo was able to capture so much of the market, with Super Mario Bros. Chief among them. In the years since its release, the game has sold more than 40 million copies, due in no small part to its being bundled with the NES starting in 1988. It has been remade and updated several times and had numerous sequels and spin-offs. Among its accolades are being named one of the greatest video games of all time by numerous publications, including Time Magazine and Game Informer. While there are countless reasons why Super Mario Bros. Has had such a lasting impact, some of the biggest are the way the game combined elements from previous games in new ways, the design of the game itself, and the impact on the video game industry. Alright, so the first bullet point is design and gameplay. The next is impact, and there's a conclusion. Hell, let's just go with the next bullet point, which is design and gameplay. While Nintendo ended up releasing cartridge-based games long after, Super Mario Bros. Was meant to be the last cartridge-based game released before switching to floppy disk-based games and a grand culmination of other games. Therefore, Super Mario Bros. Borrowed elements from earlier games like Mario Bros., coin collecting, green pipes, and turtle-like enemies, excite bikes, ability to scroll part of the screen, and Devil World's capability to have characters twice as big as characters in the previous games. However, rather than just taking elements from previous games, Super Mario Bros. Took those elements and combined them in new and unprecedented ways. As Nathan Altice writes, none of the individual aspects of Super Mario Bros. Were revolutionary, but in combination they served as the architectural foundation for tile-based worlds tailored to character-based platforming. Part of what made Super Mario Bros. Stand out was the fact that, rather than static screens like earlier Mario games including Donkey Kong and Mario Bros., Its world seamlessly scrolled as the player moved Mario. In a game such as Pitfall, the character moves across the screen from left to right, while the backgrounds remain stationary. But in Super Mario Bros., the character typically stays in the middle of the screen and the background moves from right to left. This gives the impression that the level is one continuous scene rather than individual sets. Super Mario Bros. Wasn't the first to do this, as other games, such as Defender from 1981, had to continuous scrolling. Nonetheless, it combined this and other technical accomplishments with the personality of Mario, the memorable graphics, and other elements to create something notable. In addition to scrolling backgrounds, Super Mario Bros. Had levels that were alive with their own enemies, environments, and music. Mario's first games, including Donkey Kong and Mario Bros., all took place against black backgrounds. Super Mario Bros. Had multiple locations, each with its own settings. The first level was bright and colorful, with the blue sky in the background and fluffy white clouds. The second level may seem like a throwback with its black background, but this was because it took place underground. Later levels replaced the ground with platforms that seemed to be high up in the sky, or they took place entirely underwater. This variety also extended to the enemies, which came in several shapes and sizes, and with creative names like Koopas, Goombas, Hammer Bros, Bloopers, or Piranha Plants. Each enemy had a different play mechanic for defeating them. Moreover, in Super Mario Bros., Mario had actual facial features and a personality. Games for earlier systems may have had human characters, but they tended to be little more than stick figures. Mario had distinct clothes and a mustache. When he jumped, he raised his arm as if in victory, and a bouncy chime played. These all combined to make Mario seem upbeat and energetic. More than just bouncy sound effects, Super Mario Bros. Had memorable music throughout the game. There were earlier games with music in them, but few had become as iconic as composers Koji Kondo's Super Mario Bros. Soundtrack. The theme song was so well known that when Paul McCartney met Koji Kondo, Paul started singing the overworld background music. This is from an interview by 2010. Each of the 4 environments of the game had its own theme, and yet the entire soundtrack to Super Mario Bros. Is less than 3 minutes long. Despite its overall brevity, the music of the Super Mario Bros. Has been performed by numerous orchestras around the world, has appeared in many subsequent Nintendo games, and has had academic articles and at least one book devoted to it. In addition to these aesthetic elements, the gameplay of Super Mario Bros. Is also engaging and full of secrets and surprises. It is deceptively simple. The player controls Mario, or, as a second player, his brother Luigi, and moves him from left to right as he jumps over onto enemies and environmental obstacles, such as chasms, fire, and falling objects, to achieve the final goal of rescuing Princess Peach from the evil King Koopa. The game's controls are limited to just 3 buttons. A plush-shaped one moves the character, a round one makes the character jump, and the second round one makes him jump or throw fireballs. There is also a select and start button, but those are not used while playing the game. If that was all Super Mario Bros. Consisted of, it might have been enough to make the game a hit, but the game also uses these controls in multiple ways to present various challenges and surprises. One of the biggest surprises players encounter for the first time comes at the end of the 4th level. Previous games often had a small number of levels. For example, Donkey Kong had 4 levels that repeated, and Mario Bros. Just had different colored versions of the same level. So it seemed logical that when the player reached the end of the 4th level in Super Mario Bros. And defeats King Koopa, the game would either end or perhaps cycle back to the first level. Instead, the player learns that not only have they not defeated the final boss, and that Princess Peach is in another cancel, but also that it was not the end of the game, just the end of the first of the 8 worlds, each with 4 levels. The game is full of many other surprises, such as invisible floating blocks, pathways that could be discovered by breaking bricks, and special pipes that could be entered to reveal bonuses or alternate paths that skipped a section of the level or even warp to other levels. These warp zones also made the game easier to replay because it allowed a player to skip to a later level without having to grind through earlier levels. So if a level was frustrating the player, one quick trip through the warp pipe would skip that level and let the player continue the game. These features rewarded players for exploring and encouraged them to keep replaying the game. In the days before the internet or walkthroughs, these secrets and tricks became a kind of folklore that spread from person to person, largely by word of mouth in magazines. Like traditional folk stories, some of the secrets were exaggerated or totally wrong. Because of this, players could never be sure which secrets or tricks were real, and so they had to replay the game to see for themselves. In this way, an informal network of players who was created who would talk about the game and speculate whether there were still more secrets to discover. This helped the reputation of Super Mario Bros. Grow and kept people thinking about the game. So the next is impact and conclusion, and I'll skip those. So I'll just read those 3 games. So we've done 6 games in total. We'll pick this back up next stream, guys. I'll start with The Legend of Zelda. So we'll work through the mid-'80s and go towards the late 80s. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Looks like, let me see here. The Legend of Zelda, there's Sim City from 89. Sid Meier's Civilization from 91. Mortal Kombat, Doom. I might do Zelda, Mortal Kombat, and Doom. I don't really care about Sim City. Damn, that Sim City is that old of a game? I didn't know that. Hey. Look. Kind of mess with Cookie. All right, so what's up, y'all? What are we doing? Should I play some games? What y'all think? Should I pick back up Armored Core 6? I'm kind of worried, dude, because shoot, I don't remember anything from that game at all, dude. I really don't. Oh, man. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. All right, so what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to end the stream and make sure my PS5 is connected right. And I'm going to come right back. Give me like 5 minutes, but I'll end the stream and I'll start the stream with the new title. So, yeah. Thank you, guys. There's going to be more readings coming from Santa Needs to Speak. We're talking Imperialism in Nicaragua, and we're talking about 50 key video games. So thank you for coming to today's book reading. I like doing these, man. I like getting educated, and you know, there's so many neat facts in these books, man. I like sharing with y'all. And if that inspires you to get into imperialism, guys, that's my passion. Learning about what the United States is really up to behind the scenes, how we oppress other countries, and yeah, I hope you guys will get into that topic. You know, but it inspire you to get some books or something. All right, well, let me get set up for Armored Core 6, guys. I'll be right back. Thank you for